principles, and within these principles, I always go back to the source, Sydney Banks, because he is the one who's speaking the purest. It was his insight that has changed all the people's lives, my life. And these three principles are so simple, and that's why Sid says it's very difficult to understand them. The simplicity of them is just, and the simpler and simpler, Trina, in your case, see these principles, the simpler I experience these principles, the wiser and more direction I have in being happy and content in my life. And within that, for me, that means I just follow the feeling. I just follow the positive feeling. If I think, I know that's not where I'm going to find my answer. It's the feeling. And what happens as these three principles start to change me, and they do. See, that's what's happened. I didn't change myself by doing a structured format, a strategy of what I should do. I just changed. And I don't mean I'm perfect, because obviously a Christian will say, well, you talk a lot, Harry, or you do this, or you do. I'm not trying to say I'm perfect. All I'm trying to say is that I've improved and gotten wiser and wiser with who I am. And within that, it brought a change in my life. And it all originated from my first insight. So Sid guided me to my first insight, and it was the insight of mind, which is one of the three principles. And this insight was when I was on Salt Spring Island, and I was walking, and remember, he's guided me. He's not there, but he's guided me. And my mind's going like this, normal. I hadn't gone inside yet. You see, I still was outside. I had a feeling, but that's the trick I had was that I was looking for the answer to a question. I'm going to go back to my experience in a second. But the question that I had in my mind was, what is my relationship to God? That was my question. I needed an answer to that question. I was not going to be happy until I found an answer to that question. I didn't voice that to Sid, but that was the question that was in my mind. And so I saw Sid at a gathering, and I got really not much out of it, except I knew he knew that answer. I intuitively understood that Sydney Banks knew that answer. And so my past wife and I went to Salt Spring Island to follow, to see what it was. And Christian alluded to what we were doing in the past, or what we have done in our previous training. Well, I was reading tarot cards. That's where I was at in my understanding of life. And so I had an understanding of the psychic world, but I wasn't very together at all. And so we went to Salt Spring, and we started to be among the people, but Sid guided people, and he did it in the back door, not the front door type of thing, not in front of your face. So he would never tell you what to do. And so he guided me to a feeling, and then I'm walking on St. Mary's Lake on Salt Spring Island. Christian and Pernille have been there. Very beautiful island. Would you agree, Christian?
Totally.
Yeah, it's gorgeous, gorgeous island. And I'm walking there, and my mind, remember, I haven't gone inside yet. I'm still outside. I haven't had that experience. And my mind's going like it always does. Yappity, yap, yap, yap. Beautiful setting, gorgeous place, Salt Spring Island, but yappity, yap. So I'm not on the island. I'm in the yappity, yap. And then all of a sudden, and this had nothing to do with me, Trina, nothing. My mind went totally, totally quiet. It went so silent that I stepped into the silence and disappeared. I was still there. My consciousness was still there, but I wasn't there. And and I could hear every sound, every bird, every ripple of the water, every tree swaying. I was, and I was with it. I was in it, and I was, and I was in that for about 3-4 minutes, and I was just experiencing this, and then my mind clicked back on, started thinking. I came back here. After that, life was spiritual. There was no doubt about it. That's mind, in my estimation of how to describe it, type of thing. And that's who you are. That's who you are. And the more you're aware, you experience that, live that, share that, the more it becomes alive.
Yeah.
I had the same sort of experience when we were in Salt Spring Island, when I was listening to Chip Chipman, and it was as if I was carried beyond his words into this place of silence that you were talking about previously, and I was there also for a couple of minutes. But what I noticed was that the feeling of the reference to that vast space, to that vastness, remained with me for quite some time, and I had some insights that I never knew where they came from. They were just coming plonk, 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 and I knew things that I didn't know where. How could I know what I was talking about? Because all of a sudden, I knew something that I shouldn't have known. And we were talking with my brother back in Seattle after the course on Salt Spring Island, and we were discussing the spiritual aspects of life in total, etc. And I had some inputs that I didn't know where that came from, and it was totally magic. And then gradually I came back to what I would call my normal wits that I would rather have left behind. But I came back to my normal wits, but still had a reference to this feeling of peace and all inclusiveness and being together with everything in a perfect harmony way. That was very, very beautiful, and it still is with me occasionally when I study or when I write, and then this whole atmosphere starts to return, and there's clarity in a dimension I've never experienced before.
And the trick, Trina, within all of what Christian is talking about and what I'm suggesting is that you're part of that energy. The three principles calls that innate health, innate wisdom, and that's where the psychology of the three principles has evolved, and for people to recognize just what Christian is alluding to and what you have already got glimpses of. And the joke is, of course, you don't really have glimpses. You that's who you are. So you are getting glimpses of who you are, and the more we see it comes from the inside out, that experience. See, Christian couldn't have experienced that if he wasn't already there. He sees it as an experience, the same as I do, coming sort of from God or whatever, but it actually comes, as Sid would allude, from the inside out. That's always the case. And that's what you're starting to see, is your inside is starting to shout to you, hey, I know that.
Yeah. I heard about the principles in January.
Yes. And I want to emphasize, time is irrelevant. Yeah,
I just knew that was real. It was the real deal.
that's the answer to Christian's question. this is the real deal, and you have to see it or experience it, or else it's just another self-help program. It is the real deal.
Ja. Jeg kan ikke sige det på engelsk, Christian, men det gav simpelthen så dyb en genklang inde i mig, da Mads han stod en tidlig morgen og fortalte mig om de 3 principper. Og jeg vidste, at det kunne være ligegyldigt med alt andet, fordi det var det her, der var det rigtige.
So Tracy, what Tracy is saying that what happened was that when she was acquainted with the 3 principles, she had this very, very deep feeling of recognition. Of recognition, that this was a recognition of the truth. And once you have got that, then you are there. You are there, but you're just a beginner.
Yeah. And don't lose that beginner, but don't give power to anybody else either, Trina. It's very important that you don't be a follower of other teachers or whatever. Sid never said follow him. He never said that. I followed him. That was my interpretation of my bullshit or my nonsense in my head, or what I thought. But he never said follow me. He always says it's inside you. And the more you recognize that, as you say, you can see why time is irrelevant. Because if you recognize it, you jump past everybody who has just got little pieces of it. And so I love that. No, there is no time that is involved. And another thing I want to emphasize, Christian and I had a very, very beautiful experience together. We were delayed a day and a half or so, and it was in the morning, and all of a sudden, this truth started to come out of him. I know he remembers this, and he started to speak like he spoke on Salt Spring, except wiser, because now he had all this experience. And he was a bit pleased about the fact that it started to come out. And it was so obviously truth that it didn't need any verification or anything like that. But I could see him say, oh yeah, I have this in me. This is coming out. I like this. This is who I am. I'm not repeating Harry Derbitsky's word. I'm repeating my Christian Olsen's wisdom. And that really felt good for him, type of thing. And Pernille would share it maybe with a feeling. You see, you don't need a type of, just a feeling. If you got that artistic or that creative feeling, you're way ahead of the stuff, type of thing. And it was interesting, being a big talker, that sometimes you can get lost in that, but behind it, if it doesn't have a feeling, I wouldn't listen to a word I have to say. Not a word. If it didn't have a feeling with it, it's what. So that feeling comes from within you. In the 3 principles, we call that innate health or innate wisdom, and that's what they're talking about in the psychological world. And what you want to do is appreciate the psychological directions that they're giving, because of course you want to be happy and content. You want to be cozy, hugelit. You want to be hugelit.
Yeah.
That's the same message that 3 principles are saying. Hugelit is the answer, but not just the face, inside. When I lived in Gentofte with Yannick and his mother, she would, at the end of a meal, we'd put a big fire on. She'd bring out these Belgian cigars. I like to smoke cigars. And Christian never offered me any cigars when I was, so I'm mentioning it now. Yeah, just a joke. And and coffee. I don't know. We were in England together. They don't know how to make a cup of coffee so I had to go to Denmark just to get a good cup of coffee. And we'd have coffee, and we would just sit there after a full, delicious meal. And she had a dollhouse house in Gentofte, architecturally she needed curtains that were cinema curtains. The window was so big, and it overlooked this incredible garden, and I just loved it. It was such a cozy atmosphere. There were never words spoken in that time. It was just that feeling. You see, the Danish understand something about that, and that was the only reason I got turned on by the Danish people. I liked that they were taught, they had a socialist program. I liked that they did this and that, but it was that feeling that attracted me. And I was a really speedy, rapid guy, but it still really attracted me. So we're just talking about the Hugeliet feeling. That's mind.
Yeah.
Do I pronounce it right, Christian? I don't know. I always... Nope.
You're almost there. It's Hugeliet.
Say it again.
Hugeliet.
Hugeliet. Every time I say it, the Danes give me that weird look. What word is he saying? But anyway, you know what I'm talking about. So that's what we're talking about is mind. And you could see that it's a feeling. It's a feeling of universality. You are part of the universe. You are a creative aspect that is changing the universe every second of your life. You're affecting the totality of life because we're all interconnected.
Yeah.
Call it love if you want, type of thing. So that brings us to the second principle, which is consciousness.
I would just like to say something at
Oh,
the end.
please do. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Hvad siger du?
Trine vil gerne sige noget.
Vil du sige noget, Trine?
Nej.
Okay.
So
Okay. Just wave if you want to say something, because then we will stop. But what I wanted to say is really that if you're sitting together with people and share that feeling, then what you are saying really doesn't matter. It's the feeling it's all about. So you can be babbling about the weather, you can be babbling about anything else. If you have that feeling, you're interconnected and you are sharing something very much worth sharing.
Very well said. And so in that way, Trina, you don't have to know anything. You just have to share those motherly or those beautiful feelings, and you plant seeds all over the place. That's all we're trying to do here, is plant some seeds.
Exactly.
And some of them will germinate. We know if we share a beautiful feeling, it creates cause and effect. Yeah. It creates something. And the other thing it does is it also teaches us that if we share positive feelings, our mind quiets down. We start to get in touch with our inner self, our true self, and our wisdom starts to express itself in surprising ways. The word I like is magical, that Christian used, magic. It's magic. Honestly, I don't understand what's happening to me, but I certainly can agree that I can see that it's a positive effect.
Jamen, jeg tror, at nu tættere man kommer på det, man tror på er rigtigt, på sandheden, nu mere magisk bliver det.
Det tror jeg, du er fuldstændig ret i. Men det du oplever, tror jeg, det er, at jo tættere du er på, jo mere rigtigt føles det. Så når du er i den der følelse af, det er rigtig rart at være. Der er fred på, der er du har et godt overblik, tankerne er begyndt at falde til ro og så videre, og du sidder i den der følelse der, og i virkeligheden klar til at modtage intuitioner, idéer og alt muligt andet foretagende, fordi du er så åben. Når du er i den der følelse der, så er du så tæt på sandheden, som du overhovedet kan komme.
Ja, og så er det jo, der sker magi.
Præcis, fordi den følelse er sandheden.
Ja.
Og det er derfor, den følelse kan du ikke opnå ved hjælp af sådan nogle intellektuelle overvejelser. Du kan ikke opnå den ved at læse mange bøger osv. Du kan kun opnå den i de situationer, hvor tingene falder til ro, og pludselig så blomstrer den igennem, og så er du i den.
Jo, men jeg tænker også lidt, jeg har jo også læst 1000 selvhjælpsbøger og alt muligt andet, og man kan godt genkende til, men det lyder da rigtigt, og det kan også godt give lidt genklang af noget, der er rigtigt. Men det her, det er anderledes, fordi det giver en meget, meget dybere genklang.
Så det er nøjagtigt sådan, jeg også har oplevet det.
Altså, fordi jeg kan godt, men altså nu har jeg lige læst, hvad det hun hedder, med Louise Holland, ikke? Eller Hollands bog, ja. Selvhelbredende sind.
Ja.
Og hun skriver det jo også rigtig fint, altså det minder rigtig meget om noget, vi har hørt før hele tiden, hvis du har læst mange selvhjælpsbøger. Så minder det meget om det kan man godt, det minder lidt om det her, og det her, det minder lidt om det her og sådan noget. Men når du ligesom får alt det til side, så er der noget dybere på en eller anden måde i det her. Og jeg tror, det er derfor, man bliver så ramt af det på den gode måde, ikke? Altså.
Ja.
Og det er derfor, det kan godt være, at du kan skabe nogle gode resultater ved dig selv, hvis du læser en eller anden Tony Robbins bog, eller et eller andet, eller en anden. Men jeg tror stadigvæk på, at det her er rigtigt på en anden måde, fordi det er nogle love, der eksisterer og altid har eksisteret, uanset om vi har kendt dem eller ej. Forstår du, hvad jeg mener?
Jeg forstår. Ja. Jeg husker lige, om jeg har forstået det. Det er jeg fuldstændig enig med dig i, at jeg tror, at det der forskellen på det, som vi beskæftiger os med, og Anthony Robbins og så videre, det er jo noget med, at her finder vi noget, som giver genklang med noget på et meget dybt plan, som vi føler er rigtigt. Det er ligesom om, at jeg skal ikke klandre Anthony Robbins og så videre, fordi han er en fantastisk folkeforfører. Men det er ligesom om, at han er fantastisk god til at hype folk, sådan så at de går på vandet en uge efter og så videre, men derefter bliver det som hverdag igen, ikke? Altså, og det som de her 3 principper, efter min mening, medvirker til, det er, at det hjælper en til at finde den underliggende ro, som er medvirkende til at gøre, at man kommer til at funktionere meget mere optimalt, end man har gjort tidligere. Simpelthen fordi der er nogle andre ting i spil, der er nogle andre kræfter, der begynder at bluse frem, som har ligget nede under hele det her intellektuelle tæppe, om du vil.
Ja, jeg har jo lige læst til coach, og er lige blevet færdig som life coach. Og i den periode, der havde vi også nogle livshjul. Ved jeg ikke, om du kender.
Ja.
Men den lavede jeg i januar, og i februar, der hører jeg om de 3 principper første gang. Og så kigger jeg på mit livshjul 4 måneder senere, og så har det forandret sig helt vildt. Der er jo sådan livshjul med økonomi og helbred og fritid og alt muligt, ikke? Ja. Og det var ikke fordi, jeg havde fået flere penge, eller mit helbred egentlig havde fået det bedre. Men barometerne på det var ikke så langt nede. Altså jeg havde det jo egentlig meget godt hele vejen rundt. Og der var i bund og grund ikke sket noget.
Nej, i bund og grund var der ikke sket noget. Alligevel var der jo sket.
Og alligevel så var der sket en hel masse, fordi jeg var jo nærmest fået mindre i penge, end jeg havde inden, altså 4 måneder tidligere. Men det betød bare ikke så meget mere.
Okay.
Der var ro på en anden måde, på en eller anden måde, ikke?
Trine, det er det, og det er det, der i virkeligheden indikerer, at du har fået løftet din bevidsthed Du har fået løftet din bevidsthed op på et andet plan, og det var meget skægt, fordi jeg springer lige tilbage en lille smule engelsk her, så har jeg ikke følge med.
Ja.
This we're talking about is that Trina experienced that after having been acquainted to the three principles, all of her daily problem and what she has drawn up in her life wheel really had changed character. Now they didn't have the same intensity. They didn't have the same seriousness. Everything had become a little lighter than it was previously. And I think that's one of the things that we all experience when we start to get acquainted with the three principles, that life gets easier. It's as if life ceases to be a struggle. I want to revert to the conference in London in May, which I thought was very interesting, and I want to tell you a little bit about one session I attended where one of the guys, he was a consultant within companies. And he said whenever he was called out to a job in a company, he would gather all the people that were involved in that problem he was supposed to solve. And he would never touch the problem before he had acquainted these guys with the principles. And what happened was, as soon as they got a hang of what the principles were all about, the problems that he was going to deal with seemed to disappear. So just that they were sort of changing their consciousness, which Harry is going to talk about in a minute, but that they raised their level of consciousness really did all the job for him, so that he didn't have to do anything about the problems that he were originally hired to solve. That is magic in my world, and it really shows the power of the principles and the power of the insight that follows with the principles, and the power that really starts emerging when you start connecting with what is your innate wisdom. Would you continue, Harry, with the consciousness?
Well, you can't say it much better than that to start with. That was very, very beautiful and wise. And Christian has outlined exactly how the principles work, which is all we can actually see is how they work. And one of the things Christian brings up is levels of consciousness, which is consciousness is a principle, and basically consciousness is always there, and we tap into it at various levels. And when Christian said this consultant explained the principles, what happened, of course, was the same thing that happened to you, Trina. Your level of consciousness went up. You touched, another word for consciousness is soul. You touched more, you became more acquainted with your soul. But in the psychological terms, which I don't talk too much about, but what I deal a lot with heavy addiction. The Christian was talking about the positive effects. The other side of understanding levels of consciousness is people, when you're dealing with people in heavy addiction, and Christian, of course, deals with people in smoking, an addiction type of thing. But in the heavy addiction, it becomes obvious that when the mood lowers, the addiction happens. So you're not dealing with the addiction, the problem. What you're dealing with is the fact that the mood has gone down, or the level of consciousness has gone down. You see, so you go to the principle level, to the principles, and then that, when someone sees that they're not actually trying to get rid of addiction, they're just trying to understand moods, levels of consciousness going up and down. And that's what will take them away from their addiction. Well, that's much closer to home than something outside where you're trying to intellectually solve a problem, or that gee, if I got rid of this addiction, which they're thinking about 24/7, and they're trying to use their willpower. It doesn't work at all. And so when they start to have, as Christians, example and understanding of the of levels of consciousness, or how the principles work, and their level goes up, their feeling goes up, well, of course, not only does their addiction urge go away, their wisdom taps in. And that is very interesting, because you go up and down. Even though you have this beautiful feeling now, you go up and down. And so you start to use that as a way of learning about yourself. And I love that about the consciousness. Sid would say, the only problem you have in life is lack of consciousness. Yeah, that's it. Because you haven't been paying, you're unconscious of what you're doing. You are again creating this thing. So the answer to all problems is consciousness. Connecting your consciousness to the universal consciousness, and we're back again to the oneness of life.
Beautiful, Harry.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. How does that relate to you, Trina?
Ja, men jeg synes egentlig, det lyder rigtigt. It sounds right.
Yeah, that's all you want. You don't want to get it up here. If it feels right, remember, it's coming from you.
Yeah.
That's your feeling. 6 people will listen to what I just said, and 6 people will get a different feeling from it. It's your feeling. And we're trying to unveil levels of consciousness. That's our journey. Unveiling more and more levels of consciousness. And of course, what happens is, what Christian's alluding to is, life gets easier, and you've already experienced that. So that means you've seen that.
Yeah.
That's another word for consciousness. You see it. Sid would go, sing and sing, hearing and hearing. That would be, so that's, we're looking for the big sing, and it's undeniable. And what's beautiful is it starts to solve our little problems, because the little problems are an illusion created by our little mind.
Yeah.
So that becomes the joke. Oh, I didn't know I was such a bullshitter, or to put it, in a crazy way, But this thing up here is not giving me too much good stuff. Yet it's connected to universal minds. So the natural blend of intelligence with greater intelligence is obviously the same thing. Sid said in Missing Link, there aren't 2 minds. There's only one mind used 2 different ways.
Yeah. Could you repeat that, please?
I can try. Sid said, there are not, in the Missing Link, so it's just a quote, as much as I can remember, there are not 2, this really hit me hard, Christian, because I, of course, was thinking there were 2 minds, and so I'm just talking about what kind of knocked me off my kilter a little. And so they're not 2 minds. There's just one mind used 2 different ways, like the right use of the principles and the wrong use of the principles. The native would say the red road or the black road. It's the same. And when we experience oneness, that's simple. That's simple. When we experience separation, that's where the complexity starts to come in. Like in this room we're doing here, the preciousness of it is, for a little while we slip into just, we're sharing mind, the feeling. We're not That's the beauty, because you've already experienced that, Trina. So you already are familiar with where you want to go.
Yeah.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
That's all you need. You don't need anything more. There's nothing more to get. Just live it now. Nothing more. Zero. You got it. Just live it now. Of course, that's the problem. Life's a contact sport. And before you know it, maybe I don't know these so well, and so on. But just, you already have that. That's what happened to Christian on Salt Spring. He saw that. And Pernille picked it up from him. Perhaps, I don't know how she picked it up, but perhaps she said, oh, if my dumb husband can get it, surely someone smart as I am could get this, you know. And yeah, that's a bad joke, but you know what I mean. It's very often, you know, the interesting thing about Chip and myself is we both got it from our wives. That's the truth. That's the truth. Chip did not hear from Sid first. Jan heard.
Okay.
So, and he said, wow, this wife of mine is changing. Same thing happened to me. My wife had this powerful experience. Up to that point, I documented this in a talk at Christian's home. But up to that point, I was the big, I'm 9 years older, I'm 9 years wiser, and all this stuff, you know, guys, eh? And she jumps from nowhere to way above where I can't even hear what she's saying. Well, I was quite insecure about that, but I wasn't stupid. I wanted some of that too.
Yeah.
I hope my children will say the same.
They will, but not necessarily that you'll see it in their respect and attitude. My experience with, I have 3 kids. My experience with them, and divorced. So there's a strong negative in there. They have blossomed as I've grown. And the feelings, so much so that my daughter even invited me into her classroom to help her with her students. I mean, that doesn't get a bigger compliment than that. And she knows that the grandkids, she has a 3-month and a 3-year-old, my grandkids. And she says, I don't know how you do it, Dad, but they just really have not only a good time. Her 3-month-old wouldn't take a bottle. And then I come and give it to him and he drinks the whole bottle greedily. That's not me doing that. You know, the baby's picking up on the feeling. Yeah. Obviously there, you know, and so they'll pick up on your feeling. Don't yap away at them. You don't want to teach them. If you want trouble, try and teach them. Yeah. Share your heart, like mothers know how to do, you know, type of thing. I never met a mother yet who doesn't love their kids.
No.
Yeah. So that's the feeling, that's consciousness.
Right.
It's a crazy way to describe it, but that's it.
Yeah. Now we're going to finish off with that more tangible thing called thought.
Right. In my estimation, and this is just a personal opinion, was Sid's. The fact that it was a spiritual world and you were conscious of it, that was his original teaching. Truth, he called it. But he talked about thought, has talked about thought more thoroughly than anybody I have ever experienced. And within that context, I always tell the same story, and I want to tell it to you, Trina. So the problem I had was I had a huge spiritual experience, but I was zero interested in the psychological world. I hated it, to be honest. Problems. What do I want to talk about that with the people? They just seem to be talking about a lousy feeling. I couldn't even relate to it. Of course, I had problems, but I didn't think so. but that was my misconception. So I have this experience, and all of a sudden I've got this huge job, executive director of the Aboriginal Foster Kids Society, and I'm helping. So I go and meet Sid, and Sid likes when things are going well for you, because he knows it trickles down to everybody that you're affecting. And so he takes me up with his dog Fergus. He has this dog he absolutely loved, a Scottish Terrier or something. And Sid, he used this dog because this dog would be snippy at everybody, but he was very impressed the dog liked me. So that was a really lucky thing. So I have this old convertible car, not the one I have now. It's a Nissan ZX Turbo 300 with a takeoff roof, and the dog is sticking up in the air. Sid's just loving it. The dog's having a great time, and we're driving around the island, and we drive up to the top of a mountain, and he then says, we're out, and he says, okay, shoot, ask me anything. I said, wow, this is great. And I asked about 4, 5, 6 spiritual questions, and he answers all of them. But when he answers them, he always ends it with something he wanted me to get, which was, it's all one. And so I said, this is interesting. I never answer a question with, and it's all interconnected, it's all one. I just answered the question. But he kept answering, and it's all one. And so that was obviously a clue. But as we're talking, and I'm asking a question, all of a sudden I have this experience. And what happens is my thought goes out. I'm on the top of a cliff, almost right up like this. Our thought goes out and boomerangs right back into me. I see this physically, mystically, boomerangs right back into me. And I go, oh, and it creates a feeling, instant. I thought goes out, takes its time, dances around. 15 years later, I have karma. I didn't think it was like this instant karma thing. It just danced out there and got lost somewhere. And then when I didn't understand it, it came and hit me in the chin, type of thing. And all of a sudden, this I said, wait a sec, who's creating all my suffering? If it's a boomerang, if thought is a boomerang, and it comes from the spirit, what have I been doing? I've been blaming everything on the outside for my problems. It's coming from my thought. And that changed my psychological understanding of life, and also my spiritual understanding of life, because all of a sudden I had a guide of understanding of how what I was doing. And if my mind was getting racy, I didn't analyze the raciness of the mind. I just saw, oh, I'm creating this stop, type of thing. And I would go head into another direction. And that's all Sid is talking about with thought, is change thought. And you have a different destiny. That's it. Nothing more.
So simple.
It's too simple.
Yeah.
Even as I say it, do I understand it? Not all the time. Yeah. So Sid would describe thought as a magical paintbrush. Whatever you paint, whatever color you do, that's what you're going to create. I can't describe it like that. I mean, I can intellectually describe it like that, and his metaphor is probably better than the one I use, but I experienced the other one. You see, that's what I want you to do, Trina. I don't want you to talk from a book. Just talk what you've experienced. That's the power. When Christian was talking before, he wasn't talking from a book. He was talking from what he knew, he had experienced. And you want to see what you be honest with yourself, and you can't go wrong. Can't. When you're dishonest, that's what we call lack of consciousness. You wouldn't consciously be dishonest.
I think that so the thought business, which really, what you said is very simple, because as soon as you change a thought, you can change your whole life just with changing one thought. And I think that I'm writing this book about the causes of smoking, which is in Denmark is totally misunderstood. And I think that one of the problems is really that people are taking what is happening is that people are taking their thoughts at face value. So that when they're in a situation which is stressing, they put it out. They put it outside themselves and try to create a coping mechanism. And that's why many of them smoke. And I think that as soon as and that happened to me, as soon as I started to realize that my reaction to the reality I had made was really a reaction to something, to a self-creation. That was when I thought, well, this is partly insanity. I'm really starting to react to something that I put a certain amount of truth into it, as if it was really true, and then that is going to shape up my experience of that situation, and not only that, but it's also going to define the way I behave myself. So all of a sudden it dawned on me that this is the key. Knowing that this is so is really the key to letting go. And as soon as you realize that, then this behavior of yours, which has been very compensatory, which smoking is, really doesn't have any function anymore. It drops away totally, because there's no need for it anymore. There's nothing to compensate for anymore.
Sid would say it's just common sense. Christian was expressing that in his own way, but it's just common sense. At a certain point, you just stop smoking.
Yeah.
It's just common sense. It's just the same thing with suffering or anything we do in life. It's just common sense.
Yeah.
So that's all he said. Truth and common sense are the same thing.
So the simplicity is really that the moment you stop creating the situations that calls for smoking as a handling tool, as soon as you stop creating those situations, because you realize that you have created them, then smoking falls away. But
that's to me still the most amazing thing about the principles is the bad habits fall away. Now, we don't actually consciously do something to make them fall away. They fall away. As our level goes up, we start to get a finer feeling about life. We forget about what was down in the lower level. And then we remember, 2 weeks have gone by and I haven't used heroin, or I haven't done a cigarette, type of thing. You go, that surprises me. And then if you're wise enough, you just keep going deeper and deeper into that understanding.
Well, I think one of the advantages is also, Harry, is the fact that you start to recognize when you are sliding down into that state of mind, and consequently, what happens is that you are not staying in that state of mind as long as you used to, simply because you know that you are there. Previously, you wouldn't know that you are there, so you had to cope with it. Now you know that you are down there, and you also know that within a couple of minutes you will be going up again. So it gives a lot of. It's as if this insight really eliminates your autopilot, and all of a sudden begin to take charge of what am I really doing in these different situations with my full consciousness, and that gives you a totally different life experience.
And the other side of going down that I love is there's always a pearl of wisdom now. When I go down, it's just the same as when I go up. I'm learning I wouldn't go down consciously. I went down because I didn't know something. And I go down and I see this incredible pearl of wisdom come out. I go, oh, I'm so glad I had the ability to bring myself along to see, so that I could experience this teaching by God about myself. And then of course I'm up again, but I have this newfound wisdom that what I would call a repetitive bad habit of mine that I have a new insight about.
Yeah.
And that is very, very beautiful, because I'm getting lighter.
Yeah.
Really all we're talking about is I got a heavy feeling and I don't like it. I wouldn't mind getting rid of it.
Yeah.
Throw the garbage away. Yeah. So, well, this, I've really enjoyed this. This has been really good, eh? First of all, Christian and I haven't shared like this since Denmark, and that's been fantastic. And Trina, your beautiful feelings you brought to this has just been very, very appreciated. In a way, we've got four beautiful people in the living room sharing a little bit about how we see life, called the three principles. That's what the three principles are. They're there anyway. Maybe they're there anyway. They're happening anyway. You might as well become aware of it. It's the truth, and we just, the more, if it's happening through us and it's changing and creating everything that we are experiencing in life, moment to moment and all that stuff, then we might as well become a spiritual being living here on this planet.
And I think one more thing that's very important. The three principles is not a theory.
Mm-hmm.
The three principles is a natural law, precisely in the same way that gravity is, and gravity is also invisible. But then nobody questions the existence of gravity. And what would happen here is happening around the world is that people are starting to recognize that the three principles is a law on the same level as gravity, and that it is a gift that God has given us to experience the life here on Earth, and I think it's something to be very grateful for. Yeah.
I think that's a good way to end. If you have any questions, Trina, before we call it
No.
Just take that good feeling and quiet, peaceful feeling, like I hope I do too, and enjoy yourself. It's this trick of life is to enjoy it, and yeah, it's a beautiful world with a pain in the ass outside. That's just the way it is right now. So yeah, enjoy it, and thank you for all of you. I've really enjoyed this. This has been really good.
Yeah, we did too here, and I think we go away with this feeling, and this feeling is not really connected to any number of people participating. It can arise here also among a couple. So it was very nice. Thank you very much.
And maybe what I'll say, next week we're going to talk on Christian and Harry. Christian, you got to put your name on there. You're talking too about, we're going to talk about addiction. And we'll see how how that goes. And then in 2 weeks, we have a guest speaker coming on. And let's see where everything goes.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, good night. Good
Thanks, Christian. That was fantastic.
night. Hej, Trine.
Hej.
All right, farvel.
Farvel, farvel.
Okay.
Ha det godt.
Hej.